We've got another question of the day for you. Go ahead and pause the video now, read through this, pick an answer. Once you've done that, unpause and we'll talk about it. All right, so first thing I do whenever reading through questions is read the last sentence first. Sometimes you can answer the question with just that alone. Based on these findings, which enzyme deficiency, is most likely responsible for these symptoms? All right, so we're talking about enzymes as a biochem question. That's what I got out of that. Next up, I just gloss over the answer choices very briefly, like 2 seconds. I don't even fully read the answer choices just to give me an idea of what system we're talking about. Sometimes that works, sometimes it doesn't. Here we see some of the congenital adrenal hyperplasias. So it's like androgen stuff that always comes up time and time again. That's good because now I know what I should be thinking of when I'm reading through this question. So now we're going to read through 15-day-old newborn. Okay, so that's important. Persistent vomiting, blah, 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 dehydration, low blood pressure. I don't really think 94/62 is low for a 15-day-old, but we'll go with it. And ambiguous genitalia, that's always a buzzword. Then low sodium, high potassium. Genetic analysis reveals 46XX. Okay, so we have a female genotype with ambiguous genitalia. Right away, you should be thinking of virilization. So this patient probably has more testosterone than they're supposed to. Great. Then also low sodium, high potassium. What hormone deficiency does that sound like? There's my daily dose of Dora the Explorer. That would be hypoaldosteronism. And those are our two big takeaways based off of this. Also, hypoaldosteronism would lead to the low blood pressure. So let's go over here. I drew things out in advance to spare my editor the suffering of watching me draw for 20 minutes. That is coming out of your paycheck, buddy. So these are what we're working with, hypoaldosteronism and the virilization, like we said. So low BP, low sodium, high potassium, hypoaldosteronism. If you didn't know that, put that in an Anki card right now. Also the virilization. If you see an XX genotype with ambiguous genitalia, it is too much testosterone. So we need to pick an answer choice that works with hypoaldosteronism and virilization. Let's go ahead and look through, see what we've got here. So aromatase. Aromatase turns testosterone to estrogens. So if you didn't know that, put that in Anki. That's important because that would not really explain. Oh, actually, you got to be careful when you're reading here. Enzyme deficiency. We're looking for an enzyme deficiency that causes. So if you didn't have aromatase, you would not be making estrogens and you would have too much testosterone. Okay, that could explain the ambiguous genitalia. Great. But does it explain the hypoaldosteronism? No. So we can cross off aromatase because it matches the virilization, but not our hypoaldosteronism picture. Cholesterol desmolase. So B, D, and E all refer to that same cholesterol metabolism pathway. We'll come to that in a second. Let's just jump to C, 5-alpha reductase. So 5-alpha reductase turns testosterone into DHT, which is also virilization. It's like super testosterone, essentially, except it works on certain organs like hair growth, prostate, and I believe the vocal cords as well. So if you didn't have 5-alpha reductase, you would actually have less virilization. So no, we're crossing that off. Now we need to think about that corticosteroid synthesis pathway. All right, so I was, like I said, nice to my editor. We drew it out here. The first step from cholesterol to pregnenolone / progesterone, I don't even remember which one comes first, but I do know that we have cholesterol desmolase here. If we didn't have cholesterol desmolase, we wouldn't have any androgens at all. I think that's a good enough reason to cross off our cholesterol desmolase. There would be no ambiguous genitalia. There's no virilization if there's no testosterone. Now it's between D and E, 21 and 17 alpha hydroxylase. So coming back to our chart here, I've got a really stupid way to go through this to remember which enzymes are in which pathway. Think of this, break it up in your mind into 3 separate columns, right? We've got our mineralocorticoids, our glucocorticoids, and then in the third column, you've got your androgens. The only enzyme you really need to remember is 21. It's the most common enzyme deficiency in congenital adrenal hyperplasia. So you need to remember that 21 is the first enzyme, and it's the first one moving down in the columns. So it's in your mineralocorticoid column and your glucocorticoid column. So 21 alpha hydroxylase or 21 hydroxylase deficiency. Okay, if you need to move down in a column, if we're moving down, I want you to think you're dividing by 2. If you divide 21 by 2, that's about 11 hydroxylase. If you need to move over from one column to the next column, you need to subtract 2. And that is about, osteopathic math here, 17 hydroxylase. And that's my super dummy, easy way to remember it. So again, we start with 21 after our cholesterol desmolase. If you're moving down in a column, you divide by 2 to get about 11, osteopathic math. If you're moving over in a column, you're moving over to the right, you have to subtract 2, which makes about 17. Does that make sense? No? Perfect. That's how I remember it. Hopefully that helps you. We're just moving where this line is. If you're moving over, then you put it to the right of 21, so it looks like you're doing subtraction. If you're moving down, you put it underneath 21, which makes it look like 21 is the numerator and 2 is the denominator. So divide 21 by 2. Okay, so our options are either 17 or 21. Let's start with 17. So if we crossed off 17, then we can't move over into our glucocorticoids and into our androgens, which means we're stuck moving down in our first column. So all we'll be able to make is aldosterone. We'll have hyperaldosteronism, which is the exact opposite that we have here. So it can't be 17. Now let's think about if we were to knock out 21, right? So that would be here and here. Because you got to remember, 21 is in both the mineralocorticoid and the glucocorticoid pathway. 21 is the first enzyme moving down in a column for both of them. So if you don't have 21, you can't make aldosterone and you can't make cortisol. The only thing you can do is move straight across into your androgens. So you would have hyperandrogenism or virilization, ticks that box, and hypoaldosteronism, which makes 21 alpha hydroxylase our answer for this question.